bars full lock. I'm going to turn my head as far around as possible. And on this 20-foot street, I've got about 4 feet still left over that I can make this turn easily. If you lean the bike... Hey, Motorman here. If you're not familiar with this channel, I'm a motor officer instructor. Been that for like 25 years. And I got to tell you something, especially if you haven't been here before. I like to teach people the police motor officer techniques. I'm the first guy who ever came up with that idea. I did that first with a class and then with a video that shows exactly how to use the 3 most important techniques you'll ever learn. I rode for more than 20 years before I went to motor school, but when I finished motor school, I said everybody should know the police motor officer techniques. So I'm going to give you a whole bunch of tips right now. Probably going to save your life if you practice what I tell you to. And don't forget to get a copy of my Ride Like a Pro experience video, because it goes into much more detail than what you're going to see here. But what we have here is a motorcycle that weighs over 800 pounds. You're not going to force this motorcycle around. You're not going to muscle it around. You need technique. If you're riding a little 400-pound motorcycle or 500-pound bike and you don't know these techniques, don't buy one of these until you figure this out, because it's going to make riding so much more enjoyable. So let's go. The first thing we're going to talk about is U-turns, because so many people have a problem making a simple U-turn. It just takes head and eyes, friction zone, and a little pressure on the rear brake. The friction zone is the area of clutch travel between completely open and completely closed. At low speeds, whether you're making a U-turn or any type of low-speed maneuver, you want to stay in that friction zone. It's going to make life so much easier for you. If you let the clutch out all the way, the slightest movement of the throttle causes the bike to leap ahead. We don't want to do that, especially at low speeds. The next technique is probably the most important, because you use this at all speeds, the proper use of your head and eyes. Wherever you turn your head and eyes, that's where the bike is going to go, because your hands naturally follow your eyes. It takes a little while to get the hang of this stuff, depending on what you're trying to do. As little as an hour and as much as 3 or 4 hours to get the idea. To figure out the low speed techniques, head and eyes, friction zone, and a little bit of pressure, light, steady pressure on the rear brake, is going to make everything so much easier for you. There are other ways of doing this, but this is the right way. This is the way I was taught. This is the way motor officers have been taught for more than 70 years, and this is what makes them the top 2% of riders in America. So I'm going to make, by the way, I measured this street here, and I don't want you to do this on a side street like this. I'm showing you this on a side street because so many people see my class videos and they're in a parking lot and they say, well, I don't ride around cones. Yeah, you don't ride around cones because you can't. You don't have the skill to avoid little rubber cones in a great big parking lot. So that's why I'm doing this out on the street. But I tell you, folks, to get the hang of this and to realize how well these techniques work, go to a big parking lot where you got plenty of room and there's no barriers. The barrier here is the grass on the side of the road. So the first thing I'm going to do is show you the U-turn. I'm going to be in the friction zone, a little bit of pressure on the rear brake, and I will turn my head and eyes. I'm going to make a left U-turn, so I'm going to turn my head and eyes and look over my left shoulder. The faster and further I turn my head and eyes, the better. All right, here we go. I'm going to dip a little bit to the right. I'm going to turn my head and eyes as far as possible and easily make the U-turn. One more time, because I know that happened fast. I dip it a little bit this way. I turn my head and eyes, and around comes the motorcycle. Now, from a dead stop, this is an advanced exercise. Again, using the friction zone, head and eyes, a little pressure on the rear brake. So I'll put my foot up on the brake. I'm going to turn bars full lock. I'm going to turn my head as far around as possible. And on this 20-foot street, I've got about 4 feet still left over that I can make this turn easily. If you lean the bike and you use your head and eyes, the friction zone, a little pressure on the rear brake, there's really, I mean, it's not brain surgery. It's just 3 techniques. It takes a few hours. Here's a great exercise to practice, and you could do it anywhere, hopefully in a big parking lot. I draw an X on the ground because I'm going to be doing some figure eights, and I know You don't do figure eights out on the street, but this forces you to use your head and eyes, the friction zone, a little pressure on the rear brake. Without the 3 techniques, you'll never do a tight figure eight. I mean, anybody could do a 3-acre figure eight, but that's not going to help you. So put an X on the ground. Every time you pass that X, turn your head and eyes quickly and try to find that X again. I like to think of the figure eight as building overall strength in your riding abilities. Just like going to the gym and doing a bench press, you don't have to do a bench press in real life, but it builds overall upper body strength, and that's helpful in any kind of physical activity that you do. So all I'm doing is I'm looking for that X that I drew on the ground, and every time I pass over it, I look for it again, and as you can see, I hit it every time. Head and eyes, friction zone, a little bit of pressure on the rear brake. That's all there is to it. But once again, don't practice this on a road like this. I'm doing this for a specific purpose. Practice in a big empty parking lot. Use 3 parking spaces to start with, or even 4 if you got to. But make sure you get your head and eyes around quickly. Use the friction zone and a little pressure on the rear brake. Off the bike. So if you worry about wear and tear on your clutch or your brake, yeah, it's going to take you a lot more wear and tear if you don't know what you're doing, and you tend to duck walk your bike every time it drops below 20 miles an hour. That's an embarrassment. I mean, you paid a lot of money for your motorcycles, anywhere from, if it's a heavyweight touring bike like this, somewhere around $18,000 to up to $45,000. You spend that kind of money on a motorcycle that you don't know how to ride. That's crazy. Here's another easy practice thing. The reason I show you the slow cone weave, I put up 6 or 8 cones in a straight line, 12, 13, 14 feet apart, whatever. And you get that bike dipping back and forth, just like this. My speed right now is 10 miles an hour. That's what you would need for, if you got the cones 12 feet apart, you could do it between 8 and 10 miles an hour. But it's important to learn to do this, because if you're cruising down a street and there's a bunch of parked cars over here and somebody suddenly opens the car door, you better be used to dipping that motorcycle out of the way, looking at your escape path. So get that bike dipping. It takes just a matter of moments, and like I said, you want to keep the bike around 8 or 10 miles an hour. Now, if you want to practice your counter steering, pick up your speed, 20, 25. I push forward on the left grip, the bike leans left and goes left. I push forward on the right grip, it leans right and goes right. I'm simply pushing forward. It's not pushing down, and it's not steering the bike with my body, with body English. That doesn't work. You got to push forward on whatever grip you want the motorcycle to go. So if you want it to go to the left, I push forward on the left grip, it goes to the left. I push forward on the right grip, it goes to the right. It's as simple as that. That's counter steering, but I like to call it push steering to make it less confusing. And it works every time. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something. And please get out there and practice. Subscribe, click that notification bell, and I'll see you next time. All right, here's the deal of the week. Go to ridelikeapro.com. Get yourself the USB version of the Ride Like a Pro Experience video, and that also includes Surviving the Mean Streets video. You got over 2 hours of instruction. We're going to give you Ride Like a Pro patch, a Ride Like a Pro reflective helmet sticker, and the big one on the right, that's the practice guide. Shows you how to set up all the exercises. It helps the channel out, and folks, it's $34.95. You need this. It's going to help you. It'll change your life. Thanks for watching.